Since the very earliest days of aviation, birds have posed a threat to aircraft. The idea that a small, winged animal could bring down a massive plane seems surprising, but such accidents have caused numerous near misses as well as devastating crashes and deaths. In 1905, Wilbur Wright, one of the two famous pioneering aviator brothers, wrote in his journal, "Twice passed over fences into Bread's cornfield. Chased flocks of birds on 2 rounds and killed one which fell on top of upper surface and after a time fell off when swinging a sharp curve. The plane didn't crash, and no people were injured, but that would soon change." Miracle on the Hudson. The most famous bird strike incident in recent years has to be U.S. Airways Flight 1549. Pilot Chelsea "Sully" Sullenberger was at the controls of the Airbus 320 when it took off from LaGuardia Airport on January 15, 2009. With 5 crew members and 150 passengers on board, the flight heading to Charlotte, North Carolina, should have been a routine one. But minutes after takeoff, the plane ran directly into a flock of Canadian geese. The sometimes migratory Canadian goose can be a large bird, with heights ranging from up to 48 inches and weights up to 24 pounds. One large goose hitting a plane could be dangerous, but a whole flock of them was enough to damage both engines of the huge airliner. Unable to restart the engines, Captain Sullenberger made the decision to set the plane down on the Hudson River. And less than 5 minutes after the strike, he landed on the water, saving the lives of all 155 people aboard. Losing 3 engines. Unfortunately, the passengers and crew of Eastern Airlines Flight 375 weren't as lucky. On October 4, 1960, the Lockheed L-188A Electra took off from Logan Airport. Within moments, the plane flew into a flock of starlings. Although starlings are fairly small birds, weighing in at only a mere 3.5 ounces, they do flock in huge numbers, sometimes 100,000 birds at a time. When the plane hit the flock, a number of birds were sucked into engines 1, 2, and 4. Then, with a sudden and disastrous loss of power, the plane rolled and plunged into Winthrop Bay. 62 people died in the crash, and the airplane was completely destroyed. During the investigation, 75 starling carcasses were found on the runway. A flock of gulls. Captain Sullenberger wasn't the only hero pilot who saved the lives of his passengers and crew after a bird strike. On August 15, 2019, a Ural Airlines Airbus A321 taking off from Moscow's Zhukov Sky Airport collided with a flock of gulls. The flight's captain, Damir Yusupov, was able to land the plane in a nearby cornfield, saving the lives of everyone on board. Although there were a reported 70 injuries, only one was serious enough to require hospitalization. Yusupov was praised as a hero, and images of grateful survivors standing in a cornfield brought to mind the survivors of Flight 1549 standing on the watery wings in the Hudson. Gear up for landing. On Thursday, September 15, 1988, an Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 737-260 struck a flock of pigeons. When the plane was about 100 to 200 feet above the ground, it lost power, and the engines began backfiring. Able to gain some altitude, the pilot turned away from nearby Lake Tana to return to the runway. During the return, both engines failed. The captain still tried to perform a gear-up landing, but when the 737 touched down, it broke apart and erupted in fire. Initial reports said 31 of the 102 people on board died in the crash but warned there could be more deaths as 2 people could not be found. Beware the whistling swans. Pigeons, starlings, gulls, and geese aren't the only birds to have caused crashes. In 1962, it was a flock of swans. On Friday, November 23, 1962, a Vickers 745D Viscount airplane, United Airlines Flight 297, took off from Newark, heading to Washington, D.C. During the flight, it ran into a flock of whistling swans. Although whistlers are typically the smallest type of swans, they do have an average weight of 16 pounds, enough to bring down a commercial airplane. During the flight, at least 2 birds struck the plane, one of them hitting a stabilizer. The structure was so weakened that the plane became uncontrollable. It crashed to the ground from approximately 6,000 feet, killing all 17 people aboard.